Hi everyone, this is Nina Perlove from Real Flute Project, and today I want to talk about breathing on the flute or for playing any wind instrument. And specifically I want to talk about why breathing is like a cup of coffee. So I'm going to tell you a little story. So in my story, I go to get a cup of coffee in the morning, and I want this cup of coffee to last me all day. But what happens is, as I'm leaving the house in the morning, I accidentally trip and I fall and I spill my coffee out. So it didn't last all day. So tomorrow I decide that I'm going to make sure my coffee lasts all day. So I get a bigger cup and I fill it up with coffee. And as I'm leaving the house, I trip and fall again and I spill all the coffee out and it doesn't last all day. So, frustrated, the next day, I decide I'm going to solve this problem. I'm going to get a bigger cup. So now I take my bigger cup of coffee and I fill it up all the way so it will really last me all day. But even with the lid on, I trip and fall, the lid comes off, the coffee spills everywhere, and it doesn't last all day. So, the next day, I get a much bigger cup and I fill it up, and again, I trip, it spills. My coffee doesn't last all day. What I need to do is start over with my little cup, and I need to fill it up with coffee, and I need to be very careful with it, and I need to hold it carefully, and I need to walk carefully, and I need to manage this cup of coffee carefully, so that I don't spill a single drop. And then throughout the day, I just take tiny, teeny little sips only when I need them. And I wait and take another sip. And then my cup of coffee, even though it's in this tiny little cup, can last me all day long. Okay, what does any of this have to do with breathing on the flute? Well, a lot of people talk about breathing, and they're constantly talking about the intake of air, which is filling up your cup of coffee. You're filling up your body with air. And when they have trouble making it to the end of a phrase or making their breathing goals, they always think, I just didn't get enough coffee. So they try to take a bigger breath and a bigger breath and a bigger breath and a bigger breath. But the problem is not that they didn't take a big enough breath to start with. The problem is that after taking in this big first breath, as soon as they exhale the air, they basically spill all their coffee and they let all the air come spilling out. So you can take a super big breath, but if you spill it all out on the first note, it doesn't matter how big the breath was when you took it. You're not going to make it to the end of your phrase. I find that a very small part of breathing when I'm playing the flute has to do with the intake of air, and much more attention has to be taken to controlling and managing the air on the way out, on the exhale. It's taking care of the air and only using it when you need it and using it very efficiently so that it can last all the way to the end of your phrase. So frequently I have students or I talk to musicians who say, I'm having trouble with breathing. I've done all these breathing methods. I've learned to fill my lungs, to move my diaphragm up, to push it in, to push it out, to fill my lungs backwards and forwards, to use all kinds of tools and gadgets and gizmos, but they're only focusing on the intake of air and they're not giving any attention to what happens on the way out. So what I would like you to start thinking about is how to manage the air as it's going out more efficiently. Because if you're spilling it in the beginning, it doesn't matter how big it is, you're not going to go anywhere. For instance, in the famous orchestra excerpt for flute, Debussy's Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun, there's this very beautiful solo, and it's a challenge for breathing. If you take a good breath And then I always like to take a second breath just to kind of top it off. And then you blow all the air out on the first note. It's not going to work. You have to manage the air. So don't blow out any more air than you absolutely need to get that core to your sound. And if you're resonating the sound properly, you'll need very little air to play. Be very efficient and no waste. By managing the air properly, you can go much, much further on a breath. So think about how you manage and control the air even more, or at least as much as how much air you're taking in.